Hello and welcome to yet another installment of the Doiz NFL Fantasy Stats Recap. For the first time in what feels like forever, I don't have anything really to say, so let's just go straight into the playoffs. Heading into week 14, there was still everything to play for 9 of the teams. At this point, Tom was the only player to secure a playoff spot, but would need a win to secure the bye for the next week. Brad and Skeeto were fighting it out over the other bye, and Matt, Sam, and Brooke were fighting to stay out of the toilet bowl. Hamish and Huff both needed wins and some other results to go their way, with the fact that Kane was still in the running. At the end of week 9, he was 3-15, occupying the bottom spot of the table with basically no chance to make the playoffs. Then he won his week, and then he did it again, and again, and again, meaning he was now 11-15, needing a win with the median, alongside losses from Matt, Huff, and Hamish, to make it to the playoffs. Brooke and Tom came through, defeating Hamish and Huff respectively, but unfortunately for Kane, Matt got the win against Skeeto. In the end though, it didn't really matter, as Kane ended up losing to Brad that week. With a team already ravaged by injury, Brooke woke up to the news that Chris Rodriguez was out too. Then, 9 minutes after the morning slot of games began, Sleeper sent out a notification saying that Roma Dunze was ruled out before the game began. This meant that Brooke already had a goose egg in his lineup, which was not the best of starts, and it was made even worse when players like Kyle Monongai and Christian Watson, and even Lamar Jackson, put up some disappointing numbers. If it wasn't for Drake May, and a bomb from Trey McBride, Brooke would have struggled to even make 100. Finishing the week on 135 points. Meanwhile, aside from a disappointing Jake Ferguson game, Matt's whole team came to play. 30 from Hertz, 26 from Jacobs, 27 from Dart, 20 from Franklin, and 31 from Puka got Matt to 1 point behind Brooks' total score, with the rest of his team getting him over the line, finishing on 192. Sam vs Skeeto was a clash of the titans. Baker Mayfield would make 24 for Skeeto, Josh Allen made 30 for Sam. RJ Harvey made a sweet 10 points, ETN made 34. TJ Hawkinson and Colston Loveland made 12, Kelsey made 17. Dowdle and Parkinson made 39 combined, Amon-Ra 42. But there was one issue. T. Higgins, who was suffering from a concussion, remained in Sam's lineup, meaning that he scored as many points as Tom Brady did that fantasy week. What made this worse was Travion Henderson, who would have been playing in Higgins' place, put up 42 on Sam's bench. Did this end up costing Sam in the long run? Fuck no. Sam has Bo Nix, whose 38 points ended up giving Sam the win. Kelsey and Huff had themselves a match where every game would swing the odds into their favour. Whether it be from Caleb Williams putting up 24 or Chris Olave putting up 20, Kelsey would surge into the lead. But then, a disappointing game from Justin Jefferson and Bam Knight would let Huff catch up, helped by big scores from Wan'Dale Robinson and his wide receiver 1, Terry McLaurin. This led to a Tuesday night sweat. Kelsey was only 12 points behind Huff and had one player left to play. The issue was that this player was Malik Washington. The first quarter went by, as did the second, as did the third. And then suddenly, with less than a minute left to play, Washington had 0 points. And while a 10-yard catch did soon follow, it just wasn't enough, as Kelsey had booked herself a spot in the Toilet Bowl Championship. But who would be joining her? Well, as usual, the week did not start great for Kane, as Hamish had Kirk Cousins do his usual thing against the Bucks, putting up 33 points for Hamish in a week where he really needed it due to injury to his QB, Tyrod Tate. What? You're telling me Hamish left Kirk Cousins on his bench? Oh no. And while luckily for him, this was in the Superflex spot, all of the players that could be slotted in were already currently playing or out injured, meaning that Hamish had to go to the waiver wire to hopefully find someone to plug the spot. Kane was also having his own QB woes. After putting up a big boy score last week, Kane decided to bring in Joe Burrow, having to choose between Stafford and Goff. Unfortunately for Kane, he chose Stafford, which for a while looked like a horrendous decision. Goff was sitting at 25 points, while Stafford was still in the single digits. And speaking of single digits, Joe Burrow did not have a fun time this week. He only put up 2.5 points. 2.5. And he's not the only one, with Quinshon Judkins, Ashton Genty, George Pickens, and Bretton Strange all putting up less than 9 points. Thankfully, while he didn't have Goff, he did have J-Mo. And combined with the 49er duo of George Kittle and Juwan Jennings, and the near 30 bomb from Nico Collins, Kane ended up on 177. Whilst he was scrambling through the waiver wire to find someone to slot into a superflex spot, Hamish's team was really helping him out. James Cook put up a 30-piece, and Dalton Schultz a 25 bomb. Even Saquon put up 17. Michael Wilson, he put up 16, and Dallas Goedert made 29. Hamish was sitting in a really good spot at this point, being at 150 points with both of his QBs left to play. Firstly, in his regular QB spot, he had Sam Darnold. Darnold was going up against an Indy defense that had gotten a bit smoked in the last few weeks and had many injury woes that they were dealing with at this point. And in the Superflex spot, it is the return of Old Man Rivers.
The outside lane for Warren. Rivers over the middle. Warren's got it for a first down. Abdullah out of the backfield with plenty of daylight. Rivers, and he's got a man. Touchdown!
Yes, Hamish had picked up Philip Rivers, who the week before that had been a Hall of Fame semi-finalist. Now, if I told you that Philip Rivers would throw more touchdowns than Sam Darnold, you'd expect Hamish to have smoked Kane. Well, Philip Rivers only finished with 8.8 points, meaning that Hamish was only 18 points behind Kane. In good news, Sam Darnold didn't throw any ints, so surely he would have scored some big boy points, right? Yeah, throwing no ints is good, but throwing no touchdowns, that's not good, leaving him only on 11 points and condemning Hamish to the Toilet Bowl Championship. In the 8th place playoff, Kane took Huff to Cock and Ball Torture Island. Aside from Devonta Smith, Brock Bowers and CMC, no one on Huff's team made many points, leaving him stuck on 113. For Kane, he passed that total with 3 players, with Stafford making 42, Goff 32, and Ashton Genty 44. And if you think that was bad, Kane finished on 251 points. In the 5th place playoffs, Brock did some odd little starts, benching Lamar Jackson, David Montgomery, Alec Pierce, and Christian Watson, giving the nod to some of the players that he didn't really use this season, like Aaron Rodgers, Blake Corum, Jalen Coker, and AJ Barner. Okay, maybe not the last one. AJ Barner's just that guy. However, this ended up helping him clinch 5th place, thanks to big games from those guys, and those bench players not really scoring much aside from Alec Pierce. Semi-final 1 had Sam versus Tom. This did not start off well for Tom, with Kyron Williams only putting up 11.5. This didn't really matter though, as Tom also had Bijan, as well as Kenneth Gainwell. Sam's rookies helped him fight back here, with big games from RJ Harvey and Tip McMillan, but was let down by some of his biggest hitters. Josh Allen made a nice score, but I don't mean nice as in good. Amon-Ra ended up as the wide receiver 4 on his team, and Emeka Egbuka only got 1 reception in the game. And this doesn't include the guys that got injured that week, such as TJ Hawkinson and Travion Henderson, leaving Sam at a very low score. Tom's wide receivers helped push him past that total thanks to the trio of AJ Brown, Zay Flowers, and Reno Dobbs, and if it wasn't enough, the final dagger came from Brock Purdy and his 40-burger. Semi-final 2 was like a boxing match between Brad and Matt. It started off so well for Matt, as Puka Nacua had a fucking day, and as someone who was taking on Puka Nacua in 5 of his playoff games this week, I know it's going to take a lot for Brad to come back. If you're wondering, I went 1-4 in those games. And we know Brad. He did not fuck around. 38 from T-Law, 21 from Achan, 20s from Sutton, Chase, Pitts, and JSN, and even 22 from Cam Ward, Matt's former player, helped him put up a classic high Brad score. Matt didn't take this lying down though, as he fought back with 23 from Hurts, 33 from Chase Brown, 24 from Diggs, and 22 from Juwan Johnson. The rest of his team brought him within 15 points of Brad, with his QB left to go. Unfortunately, Matt would have finished in the same position if he had started Eagles legend Kenny Pickett this week. Kenny Pickett did not see any game time this week. In the fantasy semi-finals, Jackson Dart put up 0.02 points. This relegated Matt to third place, and Brad a deserved championship match against his number one tormentor, Tom. In the third place playoff, almost all of Sam's rookies who had helped him reach the semis shat the bed. We're looking at you, Ted McMillan, Emeka Ibuka, and Travion Henderson. This, coupled with almost all of his tight ends going down, Sam could only muster 134 points. Meanwhile, 6th seed Matt did have some stinkers, with Jalen Hurts, Josh Jacobs, Troy Franklin, and Jake Ferguson, but big boy scores from Chase Brown, Stephon Diggs, and Tyler Who the Fuck is Shuck helped him to 164 and the third place finish. In the fantasy championship game, it was straight boots to asses. Javonte Williams started off the scoring for Tom, putting up 11 points, whilst Cortland Sutton put up 8 for Brad. A great game for CJ Stroud made up for the lowest scores from Zay Flowers and Romeo Dobbs. Then, the Monday morning games happened, and Brad was looking more dominant than Deshaun Watson in a massage parlour. 23 from T. Law, 14 from Achan, 27 from Breece Hall, 25 from Jamar Chase, 24 from Cam motherfucking Ward, and even 12 from Harold Fannin, who went off injured after scoring a touchdown, put Brad at an 80% plus chance of winning. Oh, and by the way, this is before Luther Burden put up 29 for him. The only real concern for Brad was Jalen Waddle, who only made 0.7 points. Tom, meanwhile, limped along. None of his players really stood out or did too well until the final game of the day. Having slumped down to a 2% chance at beat Brad, big cock Brock Purdy came out swinging, putting up 3 touchdowns while rushing into himself, ending the night on nearly 40 points. This meant that the finals matchup would be decided tomorrow, with Tom having Kyron Williams and Brad having Kyle Pitts. Oh, I did forget one player.
And he's a promising player. Here's Robinson right side. Nice cutback. He's gone. Can anybody catch him? Not tonight. McCreary chasing. Won't get their touchdown, Atlanta. 93 yards.
That touchdown alone, with how our scoring is set up, was worth 21.3 points. And when the final whistle blew, Tom was crowned as our league champion. Who cares about that? Who won the fucking toilet bowl, cunt? After looking more like the Jets version of Sam Darnold, Sammy Boy finished up with a decent 24.5 points, thanks to a couple of 2-point conversions. Hamish's running back core, a vaunted trio that would have led him to championship glory last year, finally all fired in the same week. 45 of Hamish's points came from the combination of Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, and James Cook himself put up 29. For Kelsey, Jay Jettis finally did something, whilst Caleb Williams tried taking ownership of the Bears from the Packers. However, disappointments from Jordan Addison and CeeDee Lamb were not the best for her. Thankfully, Brian Thomas Jr. and Xavier Worthy kept her in the game, and while the tight end duo of Dallas Goedert and Dalton Schultz was nice for Hamish, that was all erased, and then some, by Chris Olave. This was then followed up by a nice chunk of points from her Chargers and Justin Herbert and Omari and Hampton. Going into the final game of Monday night, Hamish was in the driver's seat with a 10-point lead. Having points on the board is always a good feeling, as even though the projections had Kelsey winning, Hunter Henry and Tyler Warren were not the most trustworthy players to depend on. Although, to be fair, Mark Andrews for Hamish is in a similar boat. And, after a horrid Ravens game, where Lamar went down and Hunter Henry scored a touchdown, Kelsey held the lead. So, even though Tyler Warren did not have a great game the following day, it was enough to secure her the victory and Hamish the championship trophy. As is tradition, we begin the award ceremony with the Spread the Love Award, which is given to the owner who uses the most unique NFL teams when building their squads. Brooke won the award last year and is one win away from having the award named after him. Let's see how the results panned out. In third place, we have, surprisingly, Kane. Kane usually has his guys and his teams all set and really doesn't stray too far from them. But I guess his long list of injuries kind of forced his hand this time, and he ended up taking players from 20 different NFL teams. The only teams that he didn't use were the Cardinals, Falcons, Ravens, Panthers, Broncos, Chiefs, Dolphins, Saints, Eagles, Steelers, Bucks, or Titans. In second place, we ended up having a tie between Matt and Tom. Each owner used 21 different NFL teams, with Tom never using the Cardinals, Panthers, Bengals, Broncos, Colts, Jags, Dolphins, Vikings, Jets, Raiders, or Bucks, whereas Matt never used the Ravens, Bills, Panthers, Bears, Lions, Texans, Colts, Jags, Steelers, Seahawks, or Bucks. So that just left first place, and with the chance to have the award named after him, Brooks swoops in and claims the top spot. Therefore, he is the winner of this year's Spread the Love Like Brook award. Anyway, the teams that Brook didn't use were the Falcons, Bengals, Cowboys, Dolphins, Giants, Raiders, 49ers, and Buccaneers. While we had 4 teams appear on less than half of the rosters this year, being the Bengals, Colts, Dolphins, and Eagles, we actually had 1 team appear on every roster. And of all of the teams to do it, it had to have been the one and only Cleveland Browns. This actually does make a bit of sense, as if you can remember back to last year, everybody but the Hunts used at least 1 Brown in their team. But this year, even Sam and Kelsey had picked them up now. Brad picked up Harold Fannin, Isaiah Bond, and technically Joe Burrow. Ah yes, Joe Burrow, my favourite Brown. Obviously I meant Joe Flacco, but I didn't even realise it until editing this bit, so yeah, Joe Flacco, not Joe Burrow. Tom picked up Jerry Jeudy, Hamish nabbed Dylan Gabriel, Brooke picked up David Njoku and Jerome Ford, Sam secured Dylan Sampson, Huff made the legendary pick of Shedeur Sanders, Matt was the hipster who had Dylan Gabriel first, Kane risked it all on Quinshon Judkins, Kelsey brought in Cedric Tillman, and Skeeto picked up Browns legend Deontay Johnson before he was cut from the team. So it counts. It is by the smallest of margins, but it counts. Next up is the Mr. Indecisive Award for the owner who had picked up the most players over the course of the year. Brad is sitting pretty with 2 wins to his name. Could we go 2 for 2 in renaming awards? In third place, we have Matt, another former winner of this award. Matt started the season off strong, nabbing 9 players over the course of 6 weeks. But as the season wore on, his team was a lot more stable, leading to him only picking up 4 more players over the remaining 8 weeks, for a total of 13 pickups. Well, for you renaming fans, I got some bad news. Brad only finished in second place. Over 12 weeks, Brad picked up 8 players, grabbing himself a player here and there, but in the middle of the season, Brad made some big changes, picking up 4 players in week 8 and 3 in week 9, which took him to 15 for the season. Before I get to number 1, I have an honourable mention for Huff. While his team was hit with injuries, they were never IR worthy, unlike Kane, so his players would have to remain on his bench, meaning he couldn't just nab a replacement player. This led to him only picking up 2 extra players across the entire season, one of which came before the season even began. So, who finished first? Well, this player made a whopping 24 successful waiver wire claims to help him get to the playoffs. And just like Brad, Brooke has now won this award twice. We are now 1 win away from the As Indecisive as Brooke award being a thing, something my ex would probably agree with. Heyo! Brooke started off slow, something my ex would agree. Brooke started off slow, not making any moves until the second week. But, just like taking a piss when you've drunk a lot, this just opened the floodgates. And aside from week 5, Brooke never went a week without adding at least 1 player to his team. Just like Brad, week 8 was a busy week for him, netting Brooke a whopping 5 players, and even week 14 had a trio of stars joining his squad. Next up is the Favourite Team Award, which lets each owner know which team was their favourite this year. Sometimes they actually get their favourite teams, and that is the case of the first owner, Brad. He picked up a total of 5.5 Bengals for his team, including first overall pick Jamar Chase, gritty master Mike Gesicki, backup QBs Jake Browning and Joe Flacco, who is the half Bengal in this due to his appearance as the Browns starting quarterback in the beginning of the season, backup running back Samaje Perine, and Mario's favourite dinosaur, Andre Yosevich. This ended up being 15% of Brad's team, a percentage shared with the next two owners on the list, Hamish and Kelsey. It wasn't enough that they were both born on the exact same day, but they had to share a favourite team too, being the Cardinals. Hamish picked up Kyler Murray to stack with Marvin Harrison Jr. and tried his luck with the Cardinals running back room, picking up Amari DeMarcado and Bam Knight. But it was his pickup of wide receiver Michael Wilson that was arguably his most important pickup. Meanwhile, Kelsey was a James Conner away from collecting all of the Cardinals running back Infinity Stones, drafting Trey Benson and bringing in Michael Carter and the aforementioned Amari DeMarcado and Bam Knight. Another thing these two share is their love of Sam, and he is next here. Being a big Tom Brady fan, it makes sense that his favourite team this year was the Buccaneers. This came about in a real funny way as he drafted Emeka Egbuka as well as Rashad White. Rashad White was then dropped by Sam, only to be picked up a week later. This was his third Buccaneers player, which meant that 11% of his team were Buccaneers. But he was not the only owner to have the Buccaneers as their favourite, as Skeeto ended up having nearly 20% of his team being Buccaneers. He picked up Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield and Cade Otton during the draft, before nabbing Tez Johnson and Sean Tucker later on. Next up, if we were to place betting odds on who Huff's favourite team would be, the Washington Commanders would be at $1. This man nabbed Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson Jr., Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott, and the preseason fantasy darling JCM. Now, obviously B-Rob got traded away to the 49ers, but he was still a part of the commies when he got drafted. We actually have a third pair of owners who share a team, this time being Tom and Kane. And their team? The Texans. Tom drafted Nick Chubb before picking up Woody Marks and Xavier Hutchinson, for 10% of his team being Texans. Whereas for Kane, he drafted Nico Collins, gave Joe Mixon a permanent spot on his IR bench, nabbed up the C. Kirk that didn't get shot, and picked up Jaden Higgins later on in the season. This just leaves two more owners to go, so let's go to Matt next and see his favourite team, the Saints. While he only drafted Tyler Shuck, he picked up Spencer Rattler after he was named the starter, Juwan Johnson to pair with his college QB of Tyler Shuck. A friendly reminder here that Juwan Johnson has been in the league for 6 years. Devin Neal, once Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller went down, and brought back Tyler Shuck after he replaced Spencer Rattler. That just leaves Brooke, who is doing his best Hamish impersonation, having multiple favourite teams. His first team is the Chiefs, having drafted Kareem Hunt and later picking up Rashad Smith and Tyquan Thornton. We follow it up with the Jets, with a similar trajectory. Brooke drafted Garrett Wilson, and then picked up Isaiah Davis and Mason Taylor later on in the season. Finally, just like Matt, we have the Saints. And just like the last two teams, Brooke only drafted one player, being Alvin Kamara, before picking up Kendre Miller and Taysom Hill later on in the season. Next up is the Blaine Gabbert Memorial Award. This is given to the player who plays for the most owners across the league. In third place, we have any player that has played for the same team more than once. This list includes Bashal Tootin, Tyler Shuck, Michael Mayer, and Rashad White, with each of these players being picked up, dropped, and then brought back to the same team that picked them up originally. In second place, we have any player that appeared on 2 different teams. Let's just blitz through these players, shall we? Kayshon Boutte, Chigoziem Okonkwo, Aronde Gadsden, Cam Ward, Alec Pierce, Tyrod Taylor, Kareem Hunt, Devin Singletary, Corey Horton, Dylan Gabriel, Amari DeMarcado, Bam Knight, Jaden Higgins, Luther Burden, Chris Rodriguez, Kirk Cousins, Shamiri DK, Devin Neal, Pat Bryant, Mason Taylor. This just leaves first place, going to the only player to appear on 3 different teams. In the draft, Skeeto drafted Demario Douglas before dropping him before the season began. Brad decided to pick him up, keeping him rostered for a good while before dropping him too. After a couple of weeks in the free agency pool, Tom ended up nabbing him to replace Cole Kmet and getting him a ring in the championship series. Next up is the One Man Army Award, given to the player who puts the team on their back during any given week. Of course, if your owner doesn't start a full lineup, your efforts will be in vain as you will be disqualified. So, In third place, we have a player from the final week before the playoffs. Going up against one of the strongest run defenses in the Cleveland Browns, Tony Pollard proceeded to rush for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns, earning Kelsey a massive 34 points. Meanwhile, this was the week that Danny Dimes tore his shit up, meaning he only scored her 0.8 points, which was still 2 times what Jalen Hurts scored that week. Jay Jettis had a whopping 11 yards for the game, while Tyler Warren had 15. Malik Washington and Chris Olave combined for a massive 40 yards, and injuries meant that she had to start Tyler Algier again. In the end, Kelsey only ended up with 113 points, meaning Pollard scored a massive 30% of her points that week. And yet, this wasn't even Kelsey's only appearance, as she also takes out the number 2 spot here. This week though, she put up a really good score, but still ended up losing. Danny Dimes had his 3-int game, but still managed to put up 16 points. Michael Carter went out for a little bit of cardio, and most of her wide receivers made in the low teens. And then we have Caleb Williams. Caleb had a day. 20 completions for 280 yards, 3 touchdowns, 53 yards rushing, 2 receptions for 22 yards, and a receiving touchdown. All that was missing from the game was a field goal made or catching an int, as Williams put up a massive 50 bomb. This ended up being 32% of Kelsey's points that week. Before we get to the first place, I have a few honourable mentions. Week 3, Caleb Williams. A lot of Kelsey's wide receivers scored in the single digits, and Caleb Williams, he put up 44. Week 8, Tucker Kraft. Kane had a perfect sit or start selection this week, but this was due to injuries and buys, meaning he had no players on his bench score any points. This almost carried over to his team, while a lot of his players didn't crack 10 points. However, Tucker Kraft had a near 150-yard game for 2 touchdowns and 38 fantasy points. Week 2, Jared Goff. Ramondre Stevenson made 22 points, Nico Collins 14, George Pickens 17, and Jameson Williams 23. And yet still, Jared Goff made 28% of Kane's points with a 48-point week. Week 6, Josh Jacobs. Calvin Ridley got hurt, Puka Nacua disappointed, as did Stephon Diggs, and Dylan Gabriel was Matt's QB1, so Jacobs' 32 bomb was another 28% week. Week 14, Jahmyr Gibbs. While Travis Etienne made 21 and Dak Prescott 24, the rest of Skeeto's team sucked badly, meaning that Jahmyr Gibbs' 37 bomb was worth 27% of his points. Week 8, Jordan Love. When you start a player who ends up on 0 points, you know it's not going to be a good time for you. But when the rest of your team makes single digits too, a Jordan Love 36-point game stands out even more. Week 12, Amon-Ra St. Brown. If Sam had a nickel for every player who scored over 13 points this week, he wouldn't even have 2 nickels. But Amon-Ra came through with a 31-point week. Week 11, Josh Allen. Sam made nearly 200 points this week, smashing the shit out of Hamish. And even still, Josh Allen and his 57 points was less than 30% of Sam's score. Week 1, Josh Allen. And if you thought that Sam might already be a Josh Allen merchant, look no further than week 1, where a near 400-yard, 2 passing, 2 rushing TD game led to 44 points for Josh Allen and a close win for Sam. Week 12, JSN. Sure, Trevor Lawrence and Kareem Hunt made 20s, but a 44-point day from JSN led Brad to earning the win this week. When it comes to having balanced teams, both Tom and Hamish were the only owners not to have a single week where a player scored 25% or more of their team's total points. In fact, Hamish had the most well-rounded team, with 9 different players top scoring for him during the season. And in first place, we have an absolute insane game. Over 250 scrimmage yards and 3 total touchdowns, Jahmyr Gibbs had a fucking day. 65 points scored for Skeeto. This ended up being nearly 35% of Skeeto's points, which is impressive when you realise that Dak Prescott put up 34 and Travis Etienne 22. It is now time for the Big Summer Blowout and Just the Tip Awards. These are given out to the owners who had the biggest and smallest winning margins. Let's start with the Big Summer Blowout Award, and we go back to week 5 for 3rd place. Aside from Bretton Strange and Jameson Williams scoring under 6 points total, Kane had had a pretty good week. Jared Goff put up 26, only outdone by Stafford and his 31. His wide receivers all had mid to high teen scores, the same as his running backs. So surely he was on the winning side here, right? Well, he was taking on Brad, and when Brad's lowest score was 11 points, you know things did not go too well for Kane. And this is before I mentioned that Tua put up 32, Cortland Sutton 19, JSN 28, Jalen Waddle 26, and T-Law putting up 29. Oh, and Jamar Chase might have put up 35 points too. In the end, despite his decent score though, Kane ended up losing by a whopping 80 points. This second place finish I was tempted to disqualify, as Tom had started Brock Purdy, who was ruled out that week. However, this is an award for the owners, not the players, so I can let this slide. Besides, it's not like the rest of his team did well. DK Metcalf, Romeo Dobbs, AJ Brown and Kenneth Gainwell combined for 13 points total, and while not the worst score, Bijan only made 10 points. If it wasn't for Kyron Williams and Woody Marks, Tom would have struggled to make 100. Meanwhile, Skeeto was a mixed bag. For every 16-point Travis Etienne score, he had a Michael Pittman who made 3.9. Cade Otton made 22, J.K. Dobbins made 9. But then we look at Skeeto's big boy in Jamar Gibbs, and it all makes sense. 41 points, along with a near 30 burger from Baker, propelled him to 185, giving him the win by 81 points. As per usual, before we get to the number one spot, I have a few honourable mentions. Okay, I have a lot of honourable mentions. Let's just rip through them, eh? Huff puts up 175, but goose eggs from Zach Ertz and Rashad Bateman help contribute to the 40-point loss for Tom. Week 7, Mahomes puts up 33 for Tom, but Sam has the better AFC West quarterback, as Bo Nix in his 44 points beats Tom by 41.5. Week 1, Hamish starts off the season strong, as 30-point games from Derrick Henry and Michael Penix beat Brad by 41.7. Week 2, an unfortunate injury to Joe Burrow ruins a Jared Goff 48-point game, as Kane loses to Skeeto by 43.5. Week 13, even though Dalton Kincaid put up 0, Huff still beat Skeeto by 44. Week 8, slim pickings for Kelsey, aside from Danny Dimes, leads to a 45-point loss to Matt. Week 8, in the battle of the injured and bye guys, Brooke puts up 185 thanks to Drake May, Jonathan Taylor and Aaron Rodgers, beating Kane by 47. Week 8, in our third Week 8 game in a row, Hamish started Pro Bowl Tyler Huntley, and along with 100 points from Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley and James Cook, smashed Skeeto by 49 points. Week 14, needing a win and other results to go his way, Huff's team shits the bed, soaking through to the sheets and into the mattress itself, thanks to his Washington boys not having a fun time, losing to Tom by nearly 50. Week 11, sure, Michael Wilson may have made 35.5 points for Hamish, helping him get to 150 points, but Sam had Travion Henderson, Ket McMillan, and to Josh Allen nearly matched that on their own, leading to a near 50-point win for him. Week 10, for every player Brooke had that disappointed him, Sam had someone that disappointed worse. Lamar only made 18, while Bo Nix only made 9. Jacoby Myers made 7, Keenan Allen made 4. In the end, a 40-point Travion Henderson masterclass was outplayed by a 55-point Jonathan Taylor game, as Brooke won by 50. Week 7, Hamish's team was a whole lot of nothing, held up by Dalton Schultz, Devontae Adams and Theo Johnson. Kelsey had big games out of CeeDee Lamb, Justin Herbert, Jordan Addison, Tyler Warren and Chris Olave, and even Pacheco had a decent game, as she won by 52. Week 12, the birth of the 9 meme originated from this game, as JJ put up less than half a fantasy point. Unfortunately for Sam, that meant that he lost by 52 in a JJ McCarthy. Week 11, while Bijan and B-Rock put up 55, Kelsey only had one player above 15, losing to Tom by 53 points. Week 8, a low-scoring game for CMC, combined with a high-scoring game for RJ Harvey, led to a 35.5-point win by Sam. Week 12, even with a JMO goose egg, Kane had a 200 bomb this week. AJ Brown had a great game for Tom, but it wasn't enough, as Tom lost by 59. Week 10, Matt's team all provided solid scores, as he defeated Huff by 62. Week 1, the only player who made more than 13 points was George Kittle, and he went off, injured, not scoring points. Meanwhile, Justin Herbert and Kalen Williams put up 60 points as Kelsey smashed Kane by 65. Week 3, aside from another Kamara dud game and a low score from Tavion Sanders, Brooks' team all came to play as he put up 215. Unfortunately for Brad, Russell Wilson could not replicate his big score from the previous week, putting up 5 points total, and combined with duds from Jamar Chase and DeAndre Hopkins, this led to a 67-point loss. 6-7. Week 8. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. All 5 games from Week 8 had big blowouts. Tom was on the receiving end of Brad's wrath, with Brad's lowest score coming from the injured Cam Scatterboo. Sam beats his wife as she loses Danny Dimes for the playoffs and loses the game by 73.5. Week 9. Hamish's quarterbacks put up 70. Tom's quarterbacks put up 17. Hamish wins by 73.5. Week 2. Just like the Cleveland Browns, Matt also falls to 0-2, getting sent to the shadow round by Brooke, losing by 76, thanks to the one good Kamara game, a 33 Roma Dunze game, and a couple of other 30-point games from JT and Lamar Jackson. Oh, finally, we have reached first place. And let me tell you, this was fucking wild. In Week 6, Breece Hall, Kyle Pitts, Cortland Sutton, and Tua put up a total of 25 points combined. The rest of Brad's team carried the slack, with Devon Achane putting up 34, Cam Scatterbo 31, Jamar Chase 25, Jalen Waddle 16, Trevor Lawrence 23, Drake London 33, and JSN 37. On the other hand though, Kelsey's quarterbacks put up 20 points each, alongside Tyler Warren, but that was about it for her, as her team limped to 138 points, losing to Brad by a whopping 86 points. Alrighty, over to the Just the Tip award now. And in third place, she's back once again, it's Kelsey, this time against Skeeto. Week 3, Skeeto had a pretty well-rounded team, but he just didn't have the power of Caleb Williams. As mentioned in the One Man Army award, the 44 points that Caleb Williams scored helped just get Kelsey over the line, beating Skeeto by 3.5 points. And this was with a CeeDee Lamb injury that left him on 0 points. For second place, Skeeto is back once again, this time taking on Matt, although he finds himself on the losing end of the stick once again. Not through a lack of trying, mind you, as Dak put up 41, J.K. Dobbins 15, Debo 24, Pittman 15, Kelsey 23, McConkey 15, Gibbs 17, and Baker 32, putting up 206. The issue is that Matt did even better. Hurts 28, Hooker 25, Diggs 27, Ferguson 27, Ridley 20, Dart 20, and even Darren Waller turned up with 22 points. This gave Matt 209 points, handing Skeeto another small loss, this time by 2.84 points. And while I'd usually do the honourable mentions now, Skeeto is in the first place match here too, so I have to bring it up now. While his third and second place losses came in weeks 3 and 5, this match is sandwiched in between them at week 4. Surely bro didn't lose 3 games in a row by less than 4 points, right? Well, it seems like these two teams this week were joined at the hip. Baker put up 34, Jordan Love puts up 33, Kelsey made 12, so did Brock Bowers. Malik Neighbours tore up his knee and is out for the rest of the season, so is Tyreek Hill. In the end, it really came down to the turnover battle. While Baker threw an int for Skeeto, Huff had not 1, not 2, but 3 different players lose a fumble. So, with a difference of -4 points, Huff lost this game by 1.5. If either Jordan Love, Bucky Irving, or Justin Fields didn't lose their fumble, Huff would have won, but yet, here we are. Okay, honourable mention time. Week 13. Both Sam and Brad needed wins here, but an unfortunate injury to Amon-Ra leads to Sam losing by 9.1. Week 9. In a big boy matchup, a low-scoring game for Kamani Vidal doomed Matt to lose by just under 9. Week 11. When Skeeto got 32 points out of Dak, he would have been happy. He would not have been happy to have seen George Pickens score 30 for his opposition though, especially when he ended up losing by 8.8. Week 9. Kane forgot to take Ramondre Stevenson out of his lineup, and it cost him the win by 8.3 points. Week 12. Hamish forgot to take Brian Thomas Jr. out of his lineup, and it cost him the win by 8.3 points also. Week 1. Matt put his faith in Cam Ward over Spencer Rattler, and so lost to Huff by 7.8 points. Week 11. A massive carry job by CMC just gets Huff over the line against Brad by 7.4. Week 5. Missing Aaron Rodgers to the bye and Lamar Jackson to injury, Brooke ekes out a victory over Hamish by 6.2 points. Week 3. With the 21-point Sam Darnold game sitting on his bench, Hamish puts his faith in Michael Penix. He is repaid with a 0.8-point game, but that is enough to defeat Huff, winning by 4.2 points. Oh, oh, oh. Okay, it's time for a little bit of a break. Here's the intermission awards. The Bradley Clark Woman Lover of the Year award is awarded to no one this year. Even though his practice window opened up towards the end of the year, no one picked up sex pest Deshaun Watson this year. The actual Woman Lover of the Year award goes to Hamish, as he was the only person to not beat Kelsey. The Best Name of the Year award goes to Matt and the name Jalen Hart's his brown rice, as it includes the name of 3 of his rostered players. Whereas the worst name goes to Hamish for dumping cum and playing dumb. Ooh. The Median Motherfucker award goes to Tom this year. While he would have made the playoffs either way, he would have finished as the 3rd seed, with Brooke getting the bye instead. This is especially relevant with Brooke losing his Week 15 game to Matt, whereas if Tom had played, he would have just snuck in a win against him. The T. Higgins Cardio King award goes to all of the players who made 0 points whilst being active. And boy, we had a few this year. Rapid fire time. Tyquan Thornton, Garrett Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Romeo Dubs, DeAndre Hopkins, Joe Flacco, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kayshon Boutte, Xavier Worthy, Michael Carter, Jonnu Smith, Jordan Addison, Darren Waller, Jake Ferguson, Jameson Williams again, Mike Evans, Rashad Bateman, Zach Ertz, Chigoziem Okonkwo, Brian Robinson. Now, I have to talk about the Bears here as well, because there are a couple more people left. In Week 9, Rome Odunze, 0 points. In Week 10, DJ Moore, 0 points. Week 11, well, he didn't start. He was on a roster, and Olamide Zacchaeus made 0. That is 3 weeks in a row where a Bears wide receiver has made 0. And, to make matters, well, worse, I guess, if we go back to Week 8, Luther Burden was so close to making it 4 in a row. However, he did make some points. 0.9. The We Were Drafting Today award goes to Sam for being put on auto pick after not being able to select in the allotted 8-hour time slot. The Brother award goes to Brooke and Sam for playing a pair of brothers against each other, in the same slot too. The These trades could have been an email go to Brad and Matt for having multiple person-for-person/person for pick trades in one league, instead of just having one big trade. Don't worry, we will get to those later. The Good Depth award goes to Brad for not only having a bench which almost outscored his active squad, but still pulled out the win too that week. The Running to the Benches award goes to Skeeto for having back-to-back weeks of having a running back on his bench score 30 plus points. The Bye Visibility award goes to Kane, Hamish and Brooke for having the most players on the bye during a single week, with 6 players each in Week 8. And finally, the Hospital Bowl is awarded to Kane and Brooke for having a total of 11 players out during their matchup. Now, this matchup happened in the aforementioned Week 8, meaning that between the two teams, they had a combined 23 players out. Our next award is the Bust of the Week award. Just a friendly reminder, these are written up the week that it happens instead of happening at the end of the season, so some of the things that may be written might not have panned out. This is given out to the player who definitely cost their owner a win that week. So they might not have been the worst player that week, but they were the worst player for their owner. Week 1 is always a funny week for Bust of the Week. You have expectations of certain players coming into the season, either from last year or from the preseason, and these can be shattered within a single game. Like, for example, Jerome Ford. You might have expected him to be the running back number 1 for the Cleveland Browns due to Quinshon Judkins having a few legal issues, but instead he took a back seat to Dylan Sampson and even Raheem Rocket Sanders. The return of Adam Thielen to Minnesota was thought to fill the Jordan Addison-shaped hole in the team, but he was usurped by Jalen Naylor. Hell, even Jaden Higgins, who signed an impressive rookie deal, was brought in thinking maybe he could be the wide receiver 2 on the Texans. And while Brooke fucked up with all of those picks, there was actually one pick that actually caused their owner to lose a game. While you would never choose to start Spencer Rattler in general, he outscored the number 1 pick of the draft, Cam Ward, and would have led Matt to victory in Week 1. It was a rough first outing for the rookie, with a below-average receiving core going up against one of the best defenses in the Broncos. Hopefully, this isn't a sign of things to come, but congratulations on winning an award in your first NFL game. Week 2. This was a tough week. Not because we had a shortage of busts, but because none of these games were really close. The narrowest win this week was by 18 points, and for almost all of the teams that lost, their bench would not have helped at all. I had narrowed it down to 3 players. Firstly, Derrick Henry. This all-conquering running back was kept to 2.3 points in a game where Baltimore put up 41 on the Browns. However, all of Hamish's benched running backs made a combined total of 0 points, and the only person that really made points on his bench was Michael Wilson, and he only had 1 reception. The next player was Justin Fields, and he was an absolute shoo-in to be the bust of the week this week, before he went off with a concussion. And because I do not consider injured players for this, he was able to escape the list. Plus, aside from Justin Fields, Huff was really let down by his wide receivers, with only one of them getting into double figures. So, that just left the third player, which ended up being one of the aforementioned wide receivers on Huff's team. Tyreek Hill, you made 18, so you're off the hook. Terry McLaurin, you were only 2 yards away from getting to double digits, so you're fine. Devonta Smith, you led the Eagles wide receiver in points. You're fine. That just leaves 2. Calvin Austin III, and the bust of the week, Khalil Shakir. Being seen as the wide receiver 1 for the Bills, he was outscored by Keon Coleman, Joshua Palmer, and Elijah Moore, finishing as the wide receiver 4 for his team. If we factor in the tight ends, he was the 7th best pass catcher on his team, 8th if you include James Cook, who only had 1 reception. And, to top things off, Wan'Dale Robinson, the current wide receiver 9, had a massive 30-point game, a result that would have almost won him his game against Brad. Week 3. Finally, some close-ass games. In fact, we had 2 matchups end with less than 5 points between the teams. I was really tempted to use Jordan Love just for this play alone.
4-man rush. Love throws. Intercepted. Picked off. Grant Delpit down the sideline. Inside the 10.
And while he did disappoint with his score, he was going up against the number 1 defense in the NFL. Meanwhile, after impressing in his first 2 games with Jaden Daniels, Deebo Samuel had a very quiet game with Marcus Mariota. But both Huff and Skeeto had players from a certain team make fuck all for them, being Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Neighbors from the New York Giants. I had the unpleasure of being able to watch this entire match live, and let me tell you, this was one of the worst fucking games I have watched in a long time. If it wasn't for Cam Scatterbo and Tyquan Thornton, this game could have been used as a new torture device. Wan'Dale, having put up over 40 points in his first 2 games, only hauled in 1 of his 4 targets, managing 26 yards. Neighbors had a similar stat line, 7 targets, 2 receptions, 13 yards. And because of this, both of these fuckers are winning the Bust of the Week award. But I'm not done yet. Russell Wilson, get the fuck over here. I have watched Zach Wilson, Raiders Jimmy Garoppolo, 2022 Mac Jones, Clayton Tune, DTR, Deshaun fucking Watson, and all of these guys have been more enjoyable to watch than your performance. Brock Purdy, with a torn UCL, still looked like a better QB than you. It's one thing to be bad, but it's another thing to absolutely suck the life out of the game. You are on the list too. It takes 2 to tango, so Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce will be joining you guys. Patrick Mahomes looked absolutely shaky in this game, missing wide open targets and looked more like that college football goofball who plays Mahomes dress up. And when your most reliable target can only make 26 yards from his receptions, it doesn't make life any easier for you. So congratulations, you two are also on this list. God, fucking, that game were the worst. Before we begin, no, DeAndre Hopkins is not bust of the week, despite putting up 0 points for Brad, who lost this game by 6 points. A lot of Brad's team let him down. It wasn't just the 0 burger from him. Besides, have you ever done a bet against a team you wanted to win? So, if the team that you want to win wins, you're happy. But if they lose, you win the bet. It's a win-win, right? Well, that's kind of what Brooke did, having David Montgomery line up in his team this week. Montgomery torches the Browns. That's points for Brooke. Monty doesn't show up. The Browns have a better chance at winning. Of course, neither of these things happened. And with his 1.2 points, he is this week's Bust of the Week. An absolute dishonourable mention must go to Adonai Mitchell, who at this point is a free agent. Not only did he fumble an 80-yard touchdown out of the back of the end zone, but later on committed a holding penalty that cost the Colts a 50-yard rushing touchdown. Why does this get a mention? Well, it was Jonathan Taylor who would have scored there, who was on Brooks' team. That touchdown would have been worth 17 points, which really would have helped Brook this week. Imagine, if you will, being up 10 points ahead of your opponent. They have 3 players left to play, and while one of them is a QB, 2 of them are running back 2s at best. Furthermore, you yourself have not only the wide receiver 1 of 2 pass-heavy teams, but one of the best running backs in the league currently. And, to top it all off, your opponent's QB only makes 12 points, and one of the running backs makes a lowly 2 points. However, during the final game, one of your wide receivers are injured and only makes 11 points, while your opponent's running back nets himself not 1, but 2 touchdowns. This is fine, right? James Cook would have had a great game, obviously. Well, no. Only 4.9 points from him was the huge reason to why Hamish lost to Brook this week. It's even worse when you realise that before this, James Cook was averaging 24 points per game. Sure, we could flame his Ravens core of Mandrews and Derrick Henry scoring less than the concussed Kyler Murray, but those two have been a little shaky this year, especially compared to the rock-solid Cook. What a barren week for a lot of teams this week. The last few weeks have had league medians of 150, 170, and 180. This week, 133. A lot of players did not play to their expectations. A few got injured, and one of them scored a whopping 0 points for their team. Thank you, Tyquan Thornton. So, while we did have a lot of players to consider for this award, we also kind of didn't. While these active players didn't play too well, the bench players played even worse. So this week, the award has to go to one of the only players to get outscored vastly by a bench player, in Keenan Allen. Rocketing himself up to 3rd place this week, Sam has now tumbled back down to 5th due to his loss. And if he has any regrets, it's starting Allen over either Hollywood Brown or Kayshon Boutte, both who put up 20 plus points. Either of these starts would have netted him the win, both in the head-to-head and in the median, but instead, Keenan Allen hauls in 4 of his 7 targets for a mere 27 yards. And while these stats are very similar to Tet McMillan, Tet also netted himself a couple of touchdowns, meaning he nearly tripled Allen's total. It is not even 10 o'clock in the morning New Zealand time yet, and I already have the bust of the week. I do not care if someone costs someone the win or whatever. Tua motherfucking Tagovailoa, what the fuck was that? Negative 4.4 points. Brad would have been better starting off Carson Palmer this week, and he's been retired for 8 fucking years. I cannot see this causing Brad to lose this week, because he's still got the projected win by a decent margin, but this is inexcusable. You can't blame the weather. You can't blame being left-handed. You can't blame you being Hawaiian, because guess what? Your opponents had a smaller, shittier version of you under centre, and he managed this game well enough to put belts to asses. And if things couldn't have got any worse for you, I feel like Mike McDaniel knew this would end badly for you, because why would he promote Quinn Ewers to QB2 instead of relying on Zach Wilson, like he did the last 6 games? Okay, future Brook here. Brad is now at a 30% chance to win due to big games from Michael Pittman and Dak Prescott. I still rate Brad's chances because 1, he is still 17 points ahead and runs on the board are more reliable than projected points, and 2, while his opponent does have 3 players left, Brad's remaining single player is JSN, who is having a massive season.
A few moments later.
Okay, this is the second future Brook here. Jahmyr Gibbs just fisted Brad, putting up 40 points, giving Brad a 10-point loss. So Tua definitely deserves this award. So you guys remember the Big Summer Blowout Award, right? Every game this week was a blowout. There were so many people on the bye this week, so teams had to start some funky players. Players like Gunnar Helm, Kyle Monongai, Pro Bowl Tyler Huntley, Sterling Shepard, and Jaden Blue were all seeing starts today, instead of players like Trey McBride, David Montgomery, Sam Darnold, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Devontae Adams. But speaking of those players, they may have made 0 points this week, but they also individually scored as much as Jerry Jeudy, Jake Ferguson, and Quinton Johnson made combined. All 3 of these guys have been solid fantasy starts, including Jake Ferguson being the tight end 1 currently, but it seemed like they all thought they were on the bye this week too. And because of this, all 3 of them are this week's busts of the week. I'm impressed. A guy scores 0.7 points and isn't even in the running for the bust of the week this week. Alvin Kamara, you are very lucky that Roma Dunze had his invisibility cloak on. Imagine being the wide receiver 2, potentially wide receiver 1, and you make 0. Your team scores 47 points, and you make 0. 5 different players on your team score touchdowns, including Caleb Williams scoring a receiving touchdown, and you make 0. You want to know what made this even worse? Brooke only lost by 14 points this week. Sounds like a decent score to be down by. Maybe he would have started someone like Elic Aomanor, Jatavion Sanders, or Isaiah Likely and still would have lost. It's very easy in hindsight to say, oh, I would have started this person instead and won. Except, here's the thing. Rome Odunze was questionable heading into this game, so Brooke set up an auto sub. That auto sub was Alec Pierce. And since Odunze was fine to play, the auto sub never kicked in, even though he scored 0 points. You want to know how much Alec Pierce made that week? 18.5. If Odunze had just sat the game out, Brooke would have won, but yet here he is, bust of the week. If I had a nickel for every Bears wide receiver that made 0 in the last 2 weeks, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. So surely this makes DJ Moore the bust of the week this week, right? No way, silly. Kane won this week. Instead, this award is given out to a player from the Friday night game. There is nothing worse than having that one player you expect big things out of, only for them to shit the bed so badly it sets you off on the wrong foot for the entire week. And for poor Sam, that's what happened with him. At one point, he was projected to be the second highest scorer this week. So even though he was taking on the first highest projected scorer in Brooke, he should at least get a median point, right? Well, fast forward to the end of the week, and Sam finished as the 6th highest scorer, missing out on a median point by a mere 6 points. Those 6 points was the margin that Bo Nix fell short by, and more. Bro was expected to be in the 20-point range, and while 8 fantasy points was enough to beat the lowly Raiders, it cost Sam dearly. Instead of residing top of the table, which he would have been if he had got this median point, he instead slipped back 2 places and is now a single point away from ending up in the toilet bowl bracket. I must ask you once again, have you ever done a bet against a team you wanted to win? So if they win, you're happy, and if they lose, you cash out your bet? Well, that's kind of what Brooke did by having Lamar Jackson in his lineup this week. It sounds absolutely crazy to say that, but the thing is Lamar Jackson has not been great this week. And while Drake May is easily occupying the QB1 spot in Brooke's team, Aaron Rodgers has been sneaky hot and cold. If Lamar torches the Browns, that's points for Brooke. If Lamar doesn't show up, the Browns have a better chance at not losing by a lot, I guess. I wouldn't say we had a good chance of winning if Lamar played bad. And guess what? You'll never guess what happened. Lamar Jackson put up 2.7 fantasy points. And Brooke... Wait, what? Brooke won this week? And while his opponent Matt did have a close loss, no thanks to Kamani Vidal and Jalen Hurts, there was just one man who pipped them out. Just because your QB is Hawk Tua doesn't mean that Jamar had to go spit on that thing, especially after being kept to only 30 yards from 3 receptions. To go with this, Jamar done got himself suspended for the next week, a week in which Brad is already missing Jalen Waddle and Cortland Sutton due to the bye, as well as a potential Chameri DK concussion/chest contusion, which really limits his scoring potential this week. And, as the person that Brad's taking on next week, I cannot wait for Brad to absolutely blow me the fuck out of the water. The Bust of the Week award goes to the person who cost their team the most by their inactions, right? Well, I was so very, very tempted to award this to Hamish, who not only started BTJ, who was out this week, but was also very critical of others who did similar things in other leagues. At least I made sure he knew he was getting roasted that day. But instead, I had only one choice this week. The bust would be coming from Brooke's team. It seems as if the stars were aligning for Brooke this week. He was getting Jonathan Taylor back, Drake May was taking on the Cincy defense, and Dan Campbell said he was going to get David Montgomery more involved in the Lions offense. Meanwhile, as I mentioned last week, Brad was missing Waddle, Sutton, Chase, Achane, Tua, and now also Drake London. So what happened? Well, just about every player on Brooke's team played under their projections. That's what's happened. Drake May was hurt by an int, turning into a pick 6, as that's -5 points instead of -2. David Montgomery only got 5 carries as Jameer proceeded to pulverise the Giants. Jonathan Taylor could only muster 58 yards. And when the Colts decided to give up on the run, Danny Dimes only looked Alec Pierce's way twice. Rome Odunze could only haul in one of his 3 targets, a far cry from the 20-plus games he was putting up earlier in the year. Even Trey McBride fell under his projections, but it was only by a couple of points, and he was projected in the mid-20s. But the worst one, the one who is winning this award, is the person who avoided this award last week. Lamar Jackson. You can run if you want to, but you can't hide. And his second score under 8 has finally caught up to him. It's not that he was bad, per se. He didn't throw any ints or lose any fumbles. It's just that he wasn't good either. If I wanted a game manager, I would have picked up Davis Mills, who outscored Jackson this week by double. The worst thing is, as well, is that Unc Rogers came down with a case of wanker's cramp in his wrist this week. So even if I was mental enough to bench Lamar for Rogers, I couldn't. I needed him at his best, but being QB 25 just wasn't enough. The amount of players who avoided this award due to their team winning is wild. Lamar Jackson, again, with 8 points. Zay Flowers, with 0.6. JSN with 4. Joe Flacco, 0. Okay, so maybe the last one was a little whoopsie by Brad, but it was still worth a mention. Instead, I have a couple of players to choose from. Justin Jefferson, the man who this award is named after, was a frontrunner in the beginning. But when I look at the bigger picture, there is someone who cost their team not only the win, but a median point too. And with the difference between the championship bracket and the toilet bowl being a single point, every point counts. 11 more yards, or 1 reception for a singular yard, and Hamish would have had a median point, residing in 6th place, and have a better chance of making the championship. Instead, Saquon Barkley put up 5.6 points. Hamish didn't get any points, and is currently in 8th place. Now, he would either need to beat Brooke with a median point, or have Matt lose and him not get the median to not end up in the toilet bowl. And even then, if Huff either gets the win or the median, there's still a chance that Hamish will miss out on the playoffs. Worst of all, Saquon was the 3rd overall pick in the draft, so Hamish would have been expecting a lot more out of his first round pick. So much to play for, many teams needed the absolute best from their players. And to be fair, a lot of them did turn up. Unc Rogers put up 25, Lamar 23, Stafford balled out, so did Michael Wilson. Huff must have been loving his QB performance for Green Bay, and the 37 bomb from Jahmyr Gibbs was neutralised by Puka Nacua. In fact, almost all of the busts came from some major injuries. Danny Dimes fucked his Achilles, CeeDee Lamb was seeing more than 1 star on the Cowboys logo, and Zach Ertz's leg turned into spaghetti. I have never considered injured players because of the potential points they could have scored had they not get injured. But this week I just couldn't do it. While a negative score from Tyrod Taylor would have been the expected result from this, there was a mistake so bad you could almost say it was legendary. In a must-win game against Tom, Huff would have been overjoyed to see his QB Jaden Daniels back. He slots him into the lineup, tossing aside Shedeur Sanders. But Jaden Daniels was not having a good time. A few yards rushing, less than 100 yards passing, and an int to boot. And then, to top it off, he leaves the game with yet another elbow injury, ending his night at 2.7 points. When Ben fucking Sinnott nearly outscores you, you know that you have had a bad game. But if you really need some shit sprinkles added to this ass Sunday, Shedeur Sanders had a fucking day. Aside from a rushing touchdown, Shedeur tossed 3 more touchdowns whilst only throwing 1 interception. Best of all, he joins the legendary trio of Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco, and the Patriots' Bailey Zappi to be the 4th quarterback to throw for over 300 yards at the Cleveland Browns home stadium, ending his night at 46.46 points. This absolutely eclipsed the minuscule score by Jaden Daniels. I guess you live by the commies, you die by the commies. And now Huff has locked in a toilet bowl playoff spot for the 2nd year in a row. I was very tempted just to give it to Phillip Rivers, just for the meme, but there are a lot of players worse than him. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, who only made 9.8 of a projected 22 points, with the difference in the 2 numbers being very similar to the difference between Skeeto and Sam. However, Sam forgot to take T. Higgins out of his lineup, so even if Gibbs made 22, Sam would have most likely started Travion Henderson, and he put up 42 on his own. What about Sam Darnold, who threw no touchdowns, scoring 11 points, ruining a big day for James Cook, Dalton Schultz, and Dallas Goedert? But the thing is, Hamish was still starting Tyrod Taylor and missed the option to slot in Kirko Chains into his lineup, who put up 32. But instead, it's the man who this award is named after, Justin Jefferson. To say that Justin Jefferson has not had the best chemistry with JJ McCarthy is a little bit of an understatement, but it's not through a lack of trying. 8 times McCarthy looked his way, and while a few of those balls were very uncatchable, he only hauled in 2 receptions for 22 yards. Worst of all, one of those drops were in the end zone, and considering how close her loss was, Kelsey would have loved if Jefferson had caught that ball. Yeah, it's not close this week. Jackson Dart, 0.02 points. What in the diddly fuck was that? When Matt needed his players to step up, you go out there and throw for 33 yards? Most QBs manage that in one throw. And this includes Taysom Hill, whose only passing attempt went for 33 yards on the dot. In fact, of all of the players to either attempt to pass or take snaps as a QB, only 7 players threw for less yards than Dart. Now, with 32 teams in the league, this doesn't sound too bad, right? Well, let's just list those players. Joe Milton, who went 2 for 2 for 11 yards after coming in for Dak at the end of his game. Joe Flacco, 1 for 1 for 4 yards, came in for Joe Burrow at the end of his game. Dylan Gabriel didn't attempt to pass, but was sacked, filling in for an injured Shedeur Sanders. Corey Bjorkes, the Browns' fucking punter. Gardner Minshew, who went 3 for 8 for 15 yards before going off with a suspected ACL injury. Mate Mapu, the Patriots' fucking linebacker. And Riley Leonard, who went 0 for 1, coming in for Phillip Rivers at the end of his game. So yeah, not exactly the best work there from Jackson Dart. Worst of all, Matt's backup QB, Tyler Shark, made 19 more points. Matt lost by 15, where he could have won by 5. This is the worst week to be a bust. It's never a good week to be a bust, to be fair, but in the championship match, this is when you need to bring your all. And for Tom, pretty much his whole team did their best. It's just that Brad's team did better. This was written up before the Tuesday night's game where Tom had a 2% chance of victory. Let me just fix that. And for Brad, pretty much his whole team did their best. It's just that Tom's team did better. I say pretty much his whole team because there were 2 men who underperformed heavily. Kyle Pitts, you easily would have been the bust of the week this week, but someone not only busted harder, but his return from injury only to score nothing after that helped him clinch this spot. With Quinn Ewers in at QB, you'd expect him to be able to rely on his main men. You know, guys like Devon Achane, Theo Weiss Jr., Greg Dulcich. You see the problem here? Jalen Waddle was targeted once, but could not haul it in, and on his only rushing attempt, rushed for 7 yards. A score of 0.7 in a matchup where 385 points were scored is diabolical. Brad only had a 2% chance of losing this game, and you basically ensured that he would do so. I know damn well that if Waddle wasn't starting, Brad would have started DeAndre Swift, and DeAndre Swift made 21 points, which would have netted Brad the win. Instead, Brad lost the championship match, just like the Bengals did against the Rams. I love that the way that I set this up is I have like all these really small awards at the start, some really short ones at the end, but fucking in the middle, I go from like a big award, a little bit of intermission, and then the bust of the week, and now the best and worst draft picks. Fuck me. Next up is the best and worst draft picks, also known as the Always Draft Tyreek Hill and the Never Draft Darren Waller Awards. These awards are given out to the best and worst draft picks for each round, and having 21 rounds in this draft means that there is 21 rounds to go through. And yes, just like previous years, I will be doing one for both active scores and total scores. You won't see much changes in like the earlier rounds, but it's the later rounds where guys might not play every single game. That's where you see the big changes. Right, let's just fucking get into this because this is yet another long one. In round 1, the best draft pick was Josh Allen, whereas the worst draft pick was Joe Burrow. This is both the same in active points and in total points. The same can be said for the second round, where Patrick Mahomes was the best draft pick and Malik Neighbors the worst draft pick. Round 3, another thing pretty similar. Christian McCaffrey, best draft pick. Brian Thomas Jr., worst draft pick. It's when we reach round 4 that we have our first difference. For points scored, Bo Nix was the best draft pick at this round. However, for total points, that would go to Justin Herbert. The worst draft pick, though, was the same, Garrett Wilson. In round 5, JSN was easily the best draft pick, whereas Mike Evans was the worst. In round 6, Jared Goff was the best draft pick in active points scored, although Drake May was the best in total points scored. James Conner, unfortunately, was the worst draft pick this round. In round 7, Dak Prescott, easily the best draft pick this round. As for the worst draft pick, well, I mean, Joe Mixon, I'm sorry. 0 points, didn't even see the field. In round 8, Jordan Love was easily the best draft pick. However, the worst draft pick is a bit different. In points scored, it goes to Aaron Jones. However, in total points, it goes to Caleb Johnson. In round 9, we have Bijan. Nope, that's the other one. In round 9, we have Brian Robinson as the worst draft pick and Tyler Warren as the best draft pick. Another easy one in round 10, George Pickens, easily the best draft pick, whereas Chris Godwin is the worst draft pick. In round 11, the best draft pick goes to Emeka Egbuka. Cooper Kupp is the worst draft pick here. However, in total points scored, we have Najee Harris. In round 12, Jake Ferguson is the best draft pick, and Pat Fryermuth is the worst draft pick in points scored. However, Ricky Pearsall is the worst in total points. Round 13 is the first time where both draft picks are different for each category. In active points scored, Deebo Samuel is the best draft pick, whereas Bashal Tootin is the worst one. But in total points scored, Bryce Young is the best draft pick, and Jaden Reed is the worst draft pick. In round 14, fucking Matthew Stafford. Of course he's the best draft pick. Look at what he's going up against. As for the worst draft pick, once again, just like Joe Mixon, I have here that Ayuk is the worst draft pick. In round 15, it's close, but Sam Darnold is the best draft pick, whereas Tank Bigsby is the worst draft pick. In round 16, Wan'Dale Robinson is the best draft pick here, whereas Jerome Ford is the worst draft pick in active points, and Anthony Richardson is the worst in total points. For round 17, Rico Dowdle is the best draft pick here by a fucking landslide. The worst draft pick for active points goes to Xavier Legette, but in total points, unfortunately, goes to Isaac Garendo. In round 18, Dalton Schultz is easily the best draft pick here. The worst one in active points goes to Adam Thielen. However, in total points, it goes to Braylon Allen. In round 19, we have our first substitution of a player, as Skeeto drafted Demario Douglas, but dropped him before the season began. Therefore, person replacing him is Deontay Johnson, which means that Deontay Johnson shares the worst draft pick award with Marshawn Lloyd, neither of them making it onto the field this year. For the best draft picks, however, Shedeur Sanders is the legendarily best draft pick in round 19. And what makes this even more legendary is that his 46-point game is not included in his active points. If we're looking at total points, however, then Kareem Hunt, best draft pick here. In round 20, Jackson Dart is the best draft pick here. For the worst draft pick, Bretton Strange wins it in active points, and Jalen Wright wins it in total points. It's also worth mentioning here that before the season began, Huff dropped Blake Corum to pick up JCM, so he has been substituted, but is not neither the worst nor the best draft pick here. Finally, in round 21, Daniel Jones, easily the best draft pick here. In active points, only Michael Wilson scored more than 0. For the worst draft pick in active points, we actually have another substitution here, as Brad dropped Pat Bryant before the season began, picking up the dropped Demario Douglas. Unfortunately, this means that he is the worst draft pick here. However, overall, the worst draft pick here was Ben Sinnott. Now it's time for the Trade Awards. This is the only award that stretches across various leagues, not just the Toilet Bowl. Of course, with a lot of these leagues being dynasty leagues, any draft picks traded will not count towards the draft until the pick has been made. So if you traded for a 2025 draft pick, I'll be judging on the player, whereas if you traded for a 2026 draft pick, you will not be in consideration yet. Our first lot of trades are the ones that didn't really do anything for either team, usually because they proceeded to trade away the picks or players that they received. And while I usually ignore trades that are net negative like this, I decided to include them, mostly because they involved Brad and Matt, which was hinted at during the intermission awards. In 22nd place, the most fair trade of them all, we have a trade between Brad and Hamish. Hamish traded away pick 403 in the 2024 draft, which ended up becoming Jared Wiley, to Brad for pick 308 in this year's draft. However, Hamish ended up trading that pick away, which means that he made 0 from this trade. Brad, however, never used Jared Wiley, dropping him before the season began, making this easily the most fair trade, with both teams scoring 0 points. And I might not be good at math, but I know that 0 minus 0 is still 0. In 21st place, we have the first of many Matt and Brad trades. Matt came into Lad's dynasty and instantly started rearranging his roster, and it seems that Brad was his favourite trade partner. Matt gave away Andre Yosevich to Brad, to get a 4th round pick for next year's draft. However, Brad never used Josevach and ended up dropping him too. Obviously, the 2026 draft hasn't happened yet, but with Josevach making 0 points, I make this the second most fair trade. In 20th place, it's Brad and Matt again. This time, Brad traded a 4th rounder in 2027 to Matt for Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson had an amazing season, especially with Marvin Harrison Jr. being out a lot. So surely Brad used him quite a bit, right? Well, no. If he did, this trade would not be this low. Brad ended up dropping him a few weeks into the season, and Michael Wilson ended up on Brooks' team. The reason this is ranked above the previous one is that the 2027 draft is already being talked about as a better draft than 2026, despite neither of them happening yet. In 19th place, it's Matt and Brad again. This time they actually kept the players they traded for. Brad traded away pick 309 to Matt for Tajay Spears. Meanwhile, Matt used that pick on DJ Giddens. Neither player saw any active time on their respective team's roster, with DJ Giddens spending the entire time on Matt's taxi squad. This was rated a bit higher, as there was potential, compared to the other trades, for these players to score some points. In 18th place, you already know who it is. Brad traded a 2nd rounder to Matt for Anthony Richardson. Now, this was in the preseason, so obviously he didn't know that Anthony Richardson would get beaten out by Danny Derps, explode his face with a resistance band, and have Philip Rivers come out of retirement to play QB. This is definitely a trade I expect to have big ramifications further on in the years, but as for right now, it is only in 18th place. In 17th place, we leave Matt behind, switching him out for Hamish. On paper, this sounded like a massive win for Hamish. He gave up pick 108 to Brad for pick 202 and 302. Those picks became Jackson Dart and Terrence Ferguson, whereas Brad used his pick on Caleb Johnson. And while, yes, Caleb Johnson had a very disappointing season for where he was being drafted, it was made worse by Brad smartly never using him. You know who else didn't use their players? Hamish. Both Dart and Ferguson were kept on his taxi squad after his poor start to the season, meaning that this is also considered a fair trade. However, I put this as the highest of the 0-0 trades because any normal person would have used Jackson Dart by now. Now that those trades are out of the way, we are finally into the trades that had points scored, and the first one is Hamish and Brad. Again. This time, Hamish traded away Mike Gesicki for a 3rd rounder in the next year's draft and a 4th in 2027. And while those picks obviously haven't happened yet, Gesicki only saw game time once in the 8 weeks he was on Brad's team, meaning that while Brad did score more points than Hamish this year, it only came at 0.3 points per week. Number 15 now, and Brooke has entered the chat. Brad was very interested in Roma Dunze, and Brooke really wanted to move on from Travis Kelce. This led to the trade of pick 107, as well as a 3rd rounder next year for Roma Dunze and Travis Kelce. Pick 107 turned into Colts tight end Tyler Warren, and surprisingly, his average points per week was only a smidge higher than the Kelce Dunze stack. Only by 0.3 points per week though. In 14th place, we're back to the Hamish and Brad trades. Hamish wanted a wide receiver, and was willing to part with a couple of draft picks for one. Brad was there for him, tossing Terry McLaurin his way for those couple of picks. With pick 203, Brad picked up Cam Scatterbo, and the other draft pick is a 3rd rounder for 2026. However, both sides of this draft had injury issues. McLaurin missed a lot of time earlier on, and Scatterbo got injured mid-season. In the end, Terry was the highest scorer of the two, outscoring Cam by 1.27 points per week. 13th place is the rare Tom trade. As I had mentioned earlier, Matt came into Ladd's Dynasty and was instantly looking to move players, especially if it led to him getting his QB, Jalen Hurts. It would take a lot for someone to give up Jalen Hurts, but luckily for Matt, he had a Lamar Jackson to offer, despite the fact this was when Lamar Jackson was still out injured. In the end, the trade sent Lamar and a couple of 4th rounders to Tom for Jalen Hurts and a 2nd rounder. Despite his impressive Week 14 performance, Jalen Hurts still managed to outscore Lamar Jackson by 3.8 points per week. Back to Brad and Matt again, and we have a decently sized trade for once. Brad was looking to move Sam Darnold and to get some picks. Matt was willing to take him up on his offer, giving up pick 208 and 306 to get Darnold and pick 308, which he turned into Devin Neal. Brad, on the other hand, turned his picks into Jaden Higgins and Elic Aomanor. However, he never started either of them. Luckily for Brad, Matt already had Bo Nix and Lamar Jackson / Jalen Hurts on his team, so Darnold didn't really get to see much game time, only earning him 111 points, which equated to about 4 points per week. Finally, a Sam trade. This is a trade that occurred last year, and at this time was a very lopsided trade. Brad gave up Dak to Sam to get Javonte Williams alongside pick 102. So, who did Brad use this pick on? No one. He traded it away, meaning that this was basically a one-for-one trade. But, after being signed to the Dallas Cowboys, Javonte Williams finally had that really great season that everyone believed that he could have in him. In the end, over the past 2 years, Dak did outscore Javonte, however. It was only by about 4.4 points per week, though. Brooke and Hamish come in at the 10th spot here, with a trade over a couple of years. Hamish wanted to move up in the draft, and Brooke was willing to comply. This gave Hamish 2 picks in the second round, whilst Brooke moved to have a second pick in the third round, plus a first for next year. Hamish nabbed a couple of wide receivers with these picks, being Xavier Legette and Jermaine Burton. Meanwhile, with Bo Nix already on his roster, Brooke picked up Troy Franklin with his third round pick. Then, this year, with pick 104, Brooke had planned to grab a running back. He then sat back and watched as Ashton Genty, Amarian Hampton, and Travion Henderson went 1, 2, and 3. Fortunately, he was able to pick up Quinshon Judkins. With Jermaine Burton being dropped by Hamish for reasons, and Xavier Legette almost never being used, Hamish's side of the trade averaged about 0.08 points per week. Meanwhile, Quinshon Judkins was a big part of Brooke returning to the playoffs once again, and Troy Franklin turned up from time to time, meaning that Brooke averaged 5.3 points per week more than what Hamish did. Brooke saw a lot of trades going down, and he wanted to be included in one, so struck up a deal with Sam. He knew that he wanted Sam Laporta, so offered him alongside a second and a fourth rounder to get Sam's first rounders for the next 2 years. Alongside Sam Laporta, Sam used those draft picks on Colston Loveland and Terrence Ferguson, whereas Brooke used the first rounder on Tyler Warren. Despite having a couple of great tight ends, Sam never really used Loveland or Ferguson, and Laporta missed some time due to injury, meaning that Tyler Warren averaged 6.2 points more for Brooke per week. Speaking of Brooke, he had a trade with Brad in the preseason. Brad was looking to pick up Chase Brown, and Brooke wanted Jonathan Taylor. Alongside swapping those two, they swapped first rounders too, with Brad moving up 4 spots to draft himself Travion Henderson. Brooke, on the other hand, snagged Emeka Ibuka at pick 108. This trade started off horribly for Brad, as Henderson was still behind Stevenson and Chase Brown did not have the best start to the season, whereas Emeka Ibuka was thrust into the wide receiver 1 spot due to injuries to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and JT is, well, JT. However, some big performances from Brad's guys and some less than stellar performances from Brooke's guys meant that Brooke only averaged 7.5 points per week more than Brad did. In 7th place, we have a classic Brad Hamish trade. Here, Brad wanted his guy T. Higgins, and gave Hamish both Rashid Shaheed and Michael Penix Jr. However, with Hamish already having Burrow, Williams and Tua, Penix didn't see too much game time. And then, when Joe Burrow went down with injury and Tua wasn't doing too well, Penix went and got himself injured. Aside from this, Shaheed also didn't see much game time, meaning that Hamish was only getting just under 3 points a week on average. Higgins was a vital part to Brad's lineup, averaging just over 12 points a week for him, meaning that Brad averaged just over 9 points per week ahead of Hamish. So, you may be wondering, how did Tom end up with Jalen Hurts on his roster? At the start of the year, he was on Kane's team. Well, Tom had something that Kane wanted, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Kane offered up Jalen Hurts to Tom for Amon-Ra as well as Tom's first round pick. Kane ended up using this pick on Cam Ward. As we know, Cam Ward didn't really set the world on fire, only seeing game time twice for Kane. Amon-Ra did see a lot of game time, however, which helped the average for his team. But come on, it's Jalen Hurts we're talking about. Bro was averaging near 20 points for Tom before he traded him away, meaning that Tom's side would score him 10 points per week on average more than what Kane did. In a very odd trade to rank, we have Matt and Hamish. This was a pick swap between the two of them, with Hamish moving up in the draft to select Quinshon Judkins. This was the only pick that was used, however, as the 408 that Hamish got was traded away, as was the 1.6 and 3.6 that Matt received. At least he still has the 4th rounder for next year, but for this year, Hamish averaged 10.4 points more than Matt for, obvious reasons. In 4th place, we have the Chase Brown trade between Hamish and Brad from the last year. Hamish was now able to use a 2nd rounder, which he ended up using on Trey Harris. However, the only action Harris ever saw was when Hamish accidentally dropped him 1 week. This means that Chase Brown was able to rack up even more points, averaging 10.5 points more than Hamish's side of the trade per week. Top 3 now, and we begin with another Matt and Hamish trade. Hamish wanted to move up in the draft, so he gave a 2nd and a 4th this year, as well as a second and a fourth next year, to Matt for pick 106. Hamish used this pick on Ted McMillan, whereas on the other hand, Matt picked up Jalen Milroe and Kyle Monongai. Great picks for the future, but neither saw any game time for Matt this year. Meanwhile, McMillan had a great season, being a high floor player, averaging 12.5 points per week for Hamish. While I've been going on and saying that Brad is super high on Trevor Lawrence, in this league, I guess he just didn't want him anymore. Out of all the people in the league, Huff was the one that was willing to take Brad up on his trade, ending up with both Trevor Lawrence and Troy Franklin traded to him. In return, Brad got himself some draft picks for the next few years, a first round next year, a second round the year after that, and a third round for the year after that. Now, obviously, at this time, none of those draft picks have happened, so they can't score any points. And that's why Huff wins this trade, for at least at the moment, averaging just over 13 points per week with the people that he got from Brad. So what trade was worse than that? Well, remember how I said that Brad was big on Trevor Lawrence? In a different league, Hamish had him, so Brad was sending him trade offers. The trade that was accepted was Hamish giving up Trevor Lawrence, a second rounder, and a fourth rounder to get Brad's first rounder and Derek Carr. Yes, so this trade happened in January, a few months before Carr announced his retirement. You know what happened to that first rounder? It got traded away. And while Brad did trade away his second round pick, he used his fourth round pick on Pat Bryant. Sure, Bryant never played for Brad, but T-Law scored enough to secure the top spot on this list, averaging nearly 15 points per week more than Hamish. We have the Fab Awards up next, and the first award is the Burning Pockets Award. This award is given to the owner, who spends all of their fab first. Brooke is the person who wins this award, spending all of his 100 fab before the start of week 10. This means that he is also one of the most fabulous owners, as he spent the most fab on players. Unlike last year, there were no in-league trades, meaning that everyone who spent all their fab wins this. So aside from Brooke, both Tom and Matt also received this award, having also spent $100 on players this year. Next up is the Cheap Ass Motherfucker Award, for the owner who lost the most waiver wire claims. While Brooke lost 8 and Brad lost 10, it was Matt who ended up losing the most of these claims, losing 12. And to top it all off, most of those losses came before he spent all of his fab. The penultimate award here is the Best Value Player, for the player who scored the most points per dollar spent on them. In third place, we have Tyler Shuck. Originally drafted by Matt, he was dropped for Spencer Rattler after losing the QB battle to him. But when Shuck took over as QB1, Matt dropped a whopping $3 on him to get him back. He didn't see much game time, but when he did, he ended up scoring about 13.5 points per dollar. In second place, we have Kamani Vidal. Just like Shuck, Matt dropped $3 on him too, once Najee Harrison and Marion Hampton went down. Vidal saw a bit more game time, having more spots for a running back on his team compared to a QB, making 21.2 points per dollar. Before we get to number 1, I have to give an honourable mention out to Juwan Johnson. Bro finished in 4th place, which is already decent, but when I tell you that Matt dropped $11 on him, it makes it even more impressive. Especially when the next person who had double digits dropped on them was Joe Flacco, who only made 4.9 points per dollar. Likewise, I have a couple of dishonourable mentions here, for Sean Tucker, Michael Mayer, and Adonai Mitchell, as the worst 3 when it came to points per dollar spent. Would you believe it? But first place also had $3 spent on them? However, this time it wasn't by Matt, it was by Brooke. Having used this player beforehand, Brooke knew that he could trust Christian Watson, and was rewarded once again with 27.5 points per dollar. Our final award is the Not Moneyball team, for being the NFL team that had the most fab spent on them. In third place, we have the Bengals, which makes a lot of sense, as $35 worth of fab was spent on their QB. What do you mean it was spent on Jake Browning and not Joe Flacco? In second place, we have a team that was 17th on this list for week 14. But after Kane picked up Adonai Mitchell, the Jets shot into second place, having $60 spent on him. In first place, it's the Chargers. $63 was spent on them total. 80% of that was spent on Oronde Gadsden alone, which is funny because it happened over 2 different waiver claims, as 2 different people picked him up at 2 different times. Next up is the Sub Me In Coach Award, which is given to the players who made the most points whilst being benched. As usual, the top 3 players are QBs, so we'll blitz through them before looking at the top players of each position. In third place, we have a QB that actually did see a lot of game time. In fact, if we took his active score and placed it on this list, he'd finish 8th. This is Daniel Jones. Kelsey had her favourite QBs, and this was not one of them. Justin Herbert and Caleb Williams were her main guys, but as I mentioned earlier, Danny Dimes did get some game time. If she had never used him, he probably would have been the top QB on this list. In second place, we have one of Brad's QBs. Now, if you followed Brad's team closely, you would have noticed that he had a knack for sitting QBs when they're going off. And Geno Smith was one of those QBs. He started the first couple of weeks, then got benched for Russell Wilson after Russell Wilson's 40-point bomb on Brad's bench the week earlier. Despite Geno putting up nearly 40 points himself being benched, Brad never let him play again, meaning that he racked up 169 points on his bench. Nice. But in first place, we have another Kelsey QB. Unlike Daniel Jones, this QB never got to see the playing field. Some weeks he would have made single-digit scores, while some weeks he would have put out some absolute big boy points. But in the end, Bryce Young made a whopping 200 points sitting on Kelsey's bench. Right, so Bryce Young was the highest scoring QB in bench points. Let's have a look at the other positions now, eh? For the running backs, we have DeAndre Swift. When you have a running back core of Devon Achane, Breece Hall, and, at least for a while, Cam Scatterbo, opportunities are very limited for anyone else. And that was the case for DeAndre Swift here. He did see quite a bit of game time, especially after Scatterbo went down injured, but still ended up being the running back who scored the most points whilst on the bench. For wide receivers, it couldn't have been anyone else but Quinton Johnston. It took Skeeto 5 weeks to start him, and in the 4 weeks that he had spent on the bench initially, Johnston put up nearly 3/4 of his bench points. Then, after some low-scoring points being active, Skeeto tossed him back on the bench, where he stayed for the rest of the season. And finally, for tight ends, it's Brad's Harold Fannin. Despite this being a tight end premium league, Brad would usually just roll out Kyle Pitts, no one else. We also have an award for the highest score in an individual week. Starting with QBs, surprisingly it's not one of Brad's. Instead, it's Shedeur Sanders in week 14. As I mentioned earlier, this was the game where he became the 4th QB to throw for 300 yards at the Cleveland Browns Stadium since 2022, in which he put up 46.46 points while sitting on Skeeto's bench. Now, why do I say it's surprising that it's not one of Brad's QBs? Well, I just have to mention some of Brad's unfortunate start and sit decisions. In week 2, Russell Wilson was on Brad's bench when he put up 41.3. The following week was the week that Geno Smith made 39 points on Brad's bench. A couple of weeks later, Jake Browning put up 31 points on Brad's bench. And in week 8, Tua put up 35 on his bench. Finally, in week 9, he had not one, but 2 QBs putting up 34 and 42 points respectively in Geno Smith and Joe Flacco. Also, in another side note, Matt left Jackson Dart on his bench in week 7, who then became the second New York Giants quarterback to put up 40 plus points on a bench this season. For running backs, this was kind of hinted at the intermission, but it's Rico Dowdle. Skeeto saw him put up 30 points in week 5 and said, "Nah, this is a fluke, it won't happen again." And to be fair, that was true. He made 35 the next week. For wide receivers, we need to go all the way back to that Russell Wilson legacy game. Despite Malik Neighbors still having an intact knee, Wan'Dale Robinson, the well-known PPR merchant, was the one who put up big points here. This week, he turned 8 receptions into 142 yards and a touchdown, which equated to 30 points on the bench. And finally for tight end, we have Colston Loveland in week 9. This was his breakout game, where he turned 6 receptions into 118 yards and 2 touchdowns, making a whopping 39.8 points. For the highest bench total, this goes to Brad. I have to list off some of his bench's scores just to show you how dominant he was. 140 points in week 2, 105 points in week 6, 109 points in week 9, 112 points in week 11, and 102 points in week 3. That 140 point week in week 2 was also the highest scoring bench for a single week. And all up combined for 1,146 points scored by his bench. Meanwhile, the lowest scoring bench goes to Huff. His bench only made 522 points over the course of the season, and this is made more impressive by the fact that in the first 2 weeks of the season, his bench had made just about 200 points alone. As for the lowest single week bench score, we got Huff once again. This makes a lot of sense, but makes even more sense when I mention which week it was. This was in week 12, which was the same week that Washington had their bye. This meant that Jaden Daniels, JCM, Zach Ertz, and Ben Sinner were already making 0, But then we have Justin Fields, who was the backup QB that week, and his remaining players of Bucky Irving, Matthew Golden, Rashad Bateman, and Dalton Kincaid were all injured, leaving 0% chance of anyone even making a point. It is now time for the Doiz Pro Bowl. This was a very interesting year for the Pro Bowl. A lot of the NFC's best and brightest did not make the roster this year due to the overwhelming amount of talent showcased from that side of the conference, whereas the AFC were more the middle of the pack kind of guys. AFC: Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, replaced by Drake May, captain. Jonathan Taylor, Devon Achane, James Cook, Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Travis Kelce, Tyler Warren, Derrick Henry, Ashton Genty. Backups: Trevor Lawrence, Bo Nix, Chase Brown, Zay Flowers, Brock Bowers, replaced by Mark Andrews, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne. NFC: Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, captain, Bijan Robinson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Puka Nacua, George Pickens, Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, replaced by Kyle Pitts, Devontae Adams, replaced by Chris Olave, Javonte Williams. Backups: Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, Kyron Williams, Drake London, Sam Laporta, replaced with Juwan Johnson, Saquon Barkley, and Josh Jacobs. Congratulations on making the Pro Bowl roster this year. Our next award is the Diamond in the Rough Award, given to the player who averaged the most points per game after not being drafted. We look at both the total weeks a player was on a team, as well as just the weeks they were active, and then compare the two. We will start with the total weeks, and in third place, we have Juwan Johnson. After the first week, Matt nabbed him for his team, meaning that unlike a lot of people on this list, Johnson is compared over double-digit weeks. So, for him to appear this high on the list is impressive enough, but seeing that he averaged 10 points per week on Matt's team shows just how good of a pickup he was. In second place, we have someone who benefited from injuries. Greg Dortch put up nearly 40 points for Brooke over the 3 weeks that he had him, before he himself went down injured, averaging 13.3 points per week and helping Brooke make it to the playoffs. But you want to know who truly got Brooke to the playoffs? Christian motherfucking Watson. Him averaging 13.8 points per week for Brooke when a lot of his wide receivers were struggling to make double digits is impressive enough, but the fact that he only started 4 of the 6 weeks Brooks had him made this even more impressive. Switching over to the active weeks now, and in third place is Dawson Knox. Nearly 15 points per week for Tom whenever he started him. This is already higher than the highest average for total weeks. Second place now would have gone to Pro Bowl Tyler Huntley, but any player who only starts 1 week is disqualified. So instead, we go to a different Pro Bowl QB here in Mac Jones. Despite spending 13 weeks on Tom's team, he only ever started in 2 games, for an average of 17.6 points per game. Just like in second place, first place also has a disqualification, as Jacoby Brissett was an absolute dog for Skeeto, but he just never used him except for the 1 week. That week, he scored 23.6 points, which obviously would have been the average for him and would have got him first place here, but instead we're giving it to Christian Watson? Yes, Christian Watson took out this award in both total weeks and active weeks, averaging a massive 20.7 points per week for Brooke whenever he started him. Next up is the One Man's Trash Award, given to the players who did the best after leaving one team and joining another. We will mainly look at points scored whilst they were active, but I will touch on what standings would look like if we included all of their fantasy points scored. In third place, we have a case of a rookie being drafted on potential before being cut after a few weeks in Devin Neal. Sam drafted him, but after a couple of goose eggs due to being stuck behind Kamara and Kendre Miller, Sam let him go. Fast forward about 10 weeks, and Kendre Miller has torn up his ACL, whilst Alvin Kamara has sprained his MCL. Matt nabs him for his team, slotting him in with ease, And since he's gone from the running back 3 to the running back 1, Neil averaged 7.7 points more for Matt than he did for Sam. In second place, we have a guy who wanted to be a ha-ha funny joker guy. With Hamish picking up Chris Godwin and others, he was able to slot them onto his IR, leaving room for some more players to join his team. One of the guys that he picked up was Alec Pierce. He didn't even make it to week 1, as Chris Godwin ended up being taken off IR before the season began, meaning Hamish had to drop someone and chose Alec Pierce. At the midway point of the season, Brooke picked him up after suffering injuries to Garrett Wilson and Roma Dunze, and Pierce quickly established himself as Brooke's most reliable wide receiver, thanks to Daniel Jones doing the same thing in real life. This led to Pierce averaging 9.1 points more for Brooke than he did for Hamish. As for first place, well, at least he scored points for his original team, I guess. One of the more underrated rookies taken in the draft this year was tight end Mason Taylor. But when Matt had Juwan Johnson and Jake Ferguson as his main tight ends, Taylor barely saw any game time, and when he did, he could only muster a total of 20 points. Finals approaching and Brooke needing someone stable to slot in, he took a shot on Taylor and was rewarded with 12.6 points. Now, because this is the only week that he had him, compared to the 12 weeks that Matt had him, this meant that on average, Taylor scored just under 11 points per week for Brooke than he did for Matt. But that's also why we're looking at total points here. But before we do that, we must take a look at the 3 who averaged more on their original teams than the teams that they went to. In third place, we have Bam Knight. With Hamish needing a quick stopgap at running back, he picked up Knight, squeezed 9.4 points out of him, then cast him off again. Kelsey scooped him up afterwards, but didn't really trot him out often, meaning he averaged 1.7 points more on Hamish's team than he did on Kelsey's team. In second place, Hamish is back again, just on the wrong side of things. After one good game, and a few bad ones, Matt had seen enough. Dylan Gabriel got the axe, only for Hamish to lure him onto his team. The issue here is that Hamish never started him, and it wasn't too long after this that he got demoted to QB2 of the Browns, meaning that even if Hamish did start him, he wasn't making any points. This meant that Gabriel averaged just under 3 points more for Matt than he did for Hamish. But the worst move of the year had to go to Chimere DK. Brad had almost got 24 points out of the man during the 3 weeks he had him before kicking him to the curb. Sam picked him up as a great backup option, but never actually had the space for him, leading to DK averaging nearly 8 points more on Brad's team than on Sam's. When looking at the total fantasy points scored, not too much has changed. The Alec Pierce from Hamish to Brooke drops from second place to third place, and the Devon Neal Sam to Matt goes from third place to second place. It's only first place that is different. And when you look at it, it makes sense. Tyler Shuck spent 5 weeks on Matt's team, making no points. He ended up getting dropped, as Spencer Rattler was obviously the QB1 at this point. This did not last, however, and soon enough, Tyler Shuck was the QB1. Matt brought him back, and Matt was rewarded with just over 90 points over the last 6 weeks, meaning that Tyler Shuck averaged 15.3 points more on Matt's team the second time than he did the first time. As for the worst side of the ball, we have a few differences here. First up, Matt had Tyrod Taylor on his team for a couple of weeks when Justin Fields was injured. Once Justin Fields came back, he got rid of him, only for Hamish to pick him up once Justin Fields got demoted. However, despite being promoted to QB1, Tyrod Taylor was a lot better on Matt's team than he was on Hamish's team, averaging 2.65 points more. In second place, we have a very unfortunate case. One of the wide receivers that Brooke picked up was the Seahawks' Torrey Horton. While he had a big game before he got picked up, he never could really replicate it while he was on Brooke's team, making just under 15 points on the 3 weeks. After dropping him, he had another big game, and so Kane snatched him up to hopefully help his injury woes. However, Kane was about as cursed as the 49ers, because as soon as he picked up Horton, Horton ended up on season-ending IR, meaning that Horton averaged just under 5 points more for Brooke than he did for Kane. And as much as I was really excited to be like, and in first place we have another one that I haven't mentioned yet, unfortunately it's that Dylan Gabriel pick that was second place in the original list. But instead of averaging just under 3 points more for Matt than he did for Hamish, it was 6 points when it came to the total points. Now this ain't no best ball league. This is a league where you got to set your choices and try not to regret it later. But if you do, this award's for you. The Hindsight is 2020 award is given to the bench player who outscored an active player by the largest margin. In third place, we go back to week 11. Just like in Saw 6, Kelsey had a carousel spinning in front of her, but she could only choose 2 quarterbacks to start. And one of those that she chose was Justin Herbert. Despite being their leading passer and leading rusher for the game, Herbert could only manage 3 points from his game against the Jags. Meanwhile, Bryce Young and the Panthers defeated the Falcons in overtime, with Bryce putting up 38.5 points, outscoring Herbert by 35.5 points. Boy, if this is only the third place score, we'll be looking at some really regretful decisions. In second place, we have a start-sit decision that I've already mentioned before. After shitting the bed against the Commanders, Brad brought in the 1-0 Geno Smith to replace Russell Wilson. And let me just say, the number of letters in Geno's first name is higher than the amount of fantasy points he scored that week, coming in at a pathetic 3.2 points. But hey, at least he timed this to happen the same week as the Russell Wilson Legacy game. 41 points from Mr. Unlimited gave him a margin of 38.1 points more than Geno for the week. And if you're wondering, the week 3 role reversal of starting Wilson and benching Smith would have finished 4th on this list. Before we get to number 1, I have a couple of honourable mentions. Week 3, the backup running back, Rico Dowdle, makes more points than Chuba Hubbard. Week 5, Brad starts Trevor Lawrence after Jake Browning because, obviously, Browning somehow outscores Trevor Lawrence by 1.9 points, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when I say that Trevor Lawrence made 29 points, then it sounds pretty impressive. Week 7, Tua gets outscored by Geno Smith and Russell Wilson. This doesn't sound like a crazy thing to say until I mention that Geno Smith made a total of 2 points this week, and Russell Wilson rode the bench the entire week. Week 14, Dylan Gabriel outscored Tyrod Taylor. Yes, Dylan Gabriel was benched the entire week. But hey, speaking of Browns QBs in Week 14, Shedeur Sanders clinched the first place spot here. After a not-so-legendary game against the 49ers, Huff would have been happy to see Jaden Daniels return from injury. He would not have been happy to see Jaden Daniels land on his elbow and leave the game. Nor would he be happy to see that Jaden Daniels only threw for 78 yards and an interception during their shutout loss. Meanwhile, as I've already mentioned twice in this video, Shedeur had a game, he threw over 300 yards, Bailey Zappi, Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco, blah blah blah, and ended up on 46.46 points, outscoring Jaden Daniels by 43.74 points and giving him the award win here. And you know what? Fuck it. We're going straight into third place here before I even say what this award is. You want to know why? It's the same fucking thing I've just mentioned. I'm not going to say it for the 4th time. Blah, blah, blah. Jaden Daniels, blah, blah, blah. Shedeur Sanders, blah, 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 blah. But the thing is the week before, Shedeur only made 12 points. That means that the difference in scoring was 33.9 points. Anyway, hey, welcome to the penultimate award, the I'll show you, you'll see award. This is given to the player who scores the most points the week after being benched, which is what Shedeur did there. Anyway, in second place, we have a player who was only an honourable mention in the previous award. As I mentioned earlier, Geno Smith put up 39 the week after Brad benched him for Russell Wilson. The difference between Geno in week 2 and week 3 ended up being 35.86 points. Before I get to number 1, here's a fun little honourable mention. In week 13, Kareem Hunt put up 9 points on the dot for Brad, which led to him being benched the next week. You want to know how much he made the very next week? 9 on the dot. Surprisingly, in first place is not Russell Wilson. Instead, it's a different one of Brad's QBs. It's Tua Tagovailoa. In the week that he won this award, he scored 35.2 points. Now, if you're paying attention, you would tell me, hey Brooke, that is lower than the difference that Geno Smith got in second place. How could Tua have outscored Geno by more? Well, the week previous was that week that Tua made negative 4.4, so he already had a bit of an advantage to his points, but to outscore himself by 39.6 points, that's pretty impressive. And now finally, we have the Down Since Day 1 award, where I rank every team to see where they would finish points-wise if they had to start their week 1 team every week. In last place, we have Hamish. A lot of his team scoring was being ruined by a lot of players missing a lot of time. Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., Ricky Pearsall, and Michael Penix all missed significant amounts of time, and players like Brian Thomas Jr. and Xavier Worthy also missed a few weeks here and there. Plus, disappointing seasons from Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley didn't really help his cause. Following him, we have Huff. I've already mentioned how building around Jaden Daniels leads to disappointment due to his injuries, but also having Tyreek Hill and Bucky Irving hurt his team a lot. So did having Matthew Golden starting, the promised Green Bay wide receiver 1 who just never really got going this year. If it wasn't for CMC, Huff might have ended up with the worst team here, only beating out Hamish's score by 8 points. Matt, surprisingly, is in at 8 here. I say surprisingly, but having players such as James Conner and Calvin Ridley in the lineup hurt quite a lot. On the other side of things, though, Jalen Hurts and Puka Nakua here to keep the team afloat, aided by big scores from Jake Ferguson and Josh Jacobs. Another playoff team here with Brook at 7. When you see Drake, May, and Jonathan Taylor as your leadoffs, you wonder how Brook finished so low. And then you go just a little bit lower and you see the abomination as the rest of his team. Alvin Kamara, Garrett Wilson, Jaden Higgins, David Njoku, Jerome Ford, Adam fucking Thielen. The highs were high, but fuck me, the lows were low. Maybe if Thielen had caught one more pass, we would have found Brook here in 6th place, as 2 points ahead of him is Kane. Joe Burrow going down injured really fucked him over, as did Tyron Tracy losing his RB1 spot and Tucker Kraft also going down. Despite all that, the rest of his team was solid. George Pickens and Jared Goff are the best picks of the bunch, but everyone else chipped in quite nicely. 5th place brings us to the final toilet bowl participant here, in Kelsey. First off, I have to mention she ended up with a whole number at the end of the season, no decimals at all. Her QBs of Justin Herbert and Caleb Williams put up nearly 700 points between them, and another good Chris Olave season helped a lot. CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson put up about 230 between them, which is usually what these guys put up on their own. And Amari and Hampton lost time to injury, but in the end, an absolutely solid team right here. 4th place now, and we have Skeet motherfucker! Right away, 2 names stick out. Mike Evans and Malik Neighbours. These lads combined for less than 100 points due to injury, and J.K. Dobbins didn't make too much more than that before he too went down. But then we have the rest of the team. Kelsey was nearly at 200, Debo was decent, Mayfield and Prescott were as great as expected, and Jahmyr Gibbs, he sure did run that fucking rock. Tom, the median motherfucker, is here at 3rd now, and when Brock Purdy is your lowest scorer, of course you're going to be this high. Mahomes in his 323, Bijan with 280, Kyron also got 200, AJ Brown was 1 game short of that too, DK Metcalf and Zay Flowers were in the 170s, and Javonte Williams surprised us all with his 211 points. Even that bum-ass Jerry Jeudy put up 100 points for Tom. I always tell you got to start the way you want to finish, and for Sam, he started off just so well. Josh Allen was a banger of a QB, putting up nearly 400 points. His running backs took a little while to take off, but when they did, they brought the points. All of his wide receivers made over 175, especially the reliable Amon-Ra St. Brown, who made 240. And then we have Bo Nix and his 280 points. The only disappointment really was Travis Hunter, but Sam is a rambling, gambling man. He saw the boom or bust, and he went for it. But in a year where the Bengals won their first 2 games of the season for the first time in 7 years, of course Brad would also start off firing too. Let's just rattle off a couple of his lowest scoring players, eh? Breece Hall, 180. Kyle Pitts, 163. Cortland Sutton, 176. Jalen Waddle, 186. DeAndre Swift, 176. Like, when that's your floor, of course you're going to fucking smash it in points. And to have T-Law, H.N., Chase, and JSN as your ceiling, it's no wonder that he was 300 points ahead of even 2nd place. And that's it. Another year of fantasy football is in the books. Congratulations again to Tom for winning the entire thing, again. But also, congratulations to Hamish for winning the trophy. I'm sure it'll go great in your games room. Also, thank you, the fans, for making it to the end of this video. And I'll see you guys again on Tuesday for Rainbow Six Siege, episode 150, Brad's Going to the Minor Party. What the fuck were these guys on during that second lockdown, man? Bye, guys.